So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Evan Madlinger. I'm our state resource conservationist here for NRCS in New Jersey. And what that means is basically with NRCS here, we kind of have three technical arms with NRCS. We have our soils division, which is head up by Edwin Munez. We have engineering, which is Hillary Trotman. And then I head up our resources group, which is essentially, I oversee, me and my staff oversee everything from agronomy and livestock to, wildlife, forestry, stream stuff like that. So anything that's kind of not fully captured under soils and engineering. So with that, and I'm also the head of our CIG program here. So this is why you're hearing from me. This is the one program that I oversee for NRCS. So with that, Gail, maybe start with you if you want to flip your camera on or whatever, say hi. Or
Yeah, I even comb my hair. Hang on.
nice.
I think. Wait, let me look. Oh. Hello, everyone. I'm Gail Bartok, and I am the Assistant State Conservationist for NRCS programs in New Jersey, which means I have a lot of hats. I manage the financial programs for New Jersey, and that means those are like crazy acronyms like EQIP, CSP. I'm also the RCPP point of contact for New Jersey, and that stands for Regional Conservation Partnership Program, which is another type of sort of grant program, similar to CIG, but a little different. And the other hat I wear is I am the easement programs manager for New Jersey, doing things like wetlands reserve easements, floodplain easements, ASAP, ALE, which is agricultural land easements. And I also do help Evan with the CIG grants. So that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. And Uzi, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
All right. See if you maybe you can. Oh wow, you see me?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay. Hi guys. My name is Lucio Torres. Everybody call me Uzi in New Jersey, so there'll be no problem with that with your name, my name. I'm a the management analyst for management and strategies for NRCS in New Jersey. I think what I do really is I submit all the documentation that for all the agreements to the grants and agreements division in Washington D.C. So if you guys submit all the documentation, I will be in charge of that. I will be helping you to submit the information, fill out the information, and any other question that you have on that behalf. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you, Uzi. So Uzi kind of brings up a good point here. And I struggle with this, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm used to doing a lot of these kind of calls and outreach and talk about our programs and get real in depth with some of this stuff. When it comes to this kind of grant application of grants and agreements, they're a little bit stricter about making sure everybody's getting a fair shot at this and hearing the same kind of information and no one's getting kind of an unfair advantage. So that's why you'll see, and we'll talk about this a little bit in my presentation, that a lot of questions go directly to grants and agreements as opposed to us, when you're applying and putting in for this grant. So just so we'll try to keep that in mind as we go through here. I'll definitely answer anything I can, Uzi, Gail too. Depending what you ask, if there may be something you guys might want to know or might ask that we might not be able to officially answer on the call, and we might have to direct you to grants and agreements. Hopefully not, but just so you know, it's not me being a jerk. It's just they're kind of strict about some of the things that we can answer and can't answer. So if you're used to working with us, this is a little more formal than what we're typically used to. So anyway, so just that public service announcement. So with that, I'm going to get going here. I'm going to turn my camera off real quick, like I said, to save some bandwidth here. I'll come back to you guys here when I'm done presenting. Let me get sharing here. Okay, let's see if we can get this going here. Okay, let's see if we can move this out of the way. Okay, can you guys see my screen okay? And I can't see it right now, so if someone gives me an audible yes, if you can see the presentation.
It looks good, Evan.
Thank you, Gail. All right, so obviously we're here to talk about the fiscal year 23 conservation innovation grants, the New Jersey program, and we'll get into this here a little bit.
Hey, Evan, it looks like your mic is muted. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, man.
Thanks,
That's
Evan.
weird. Yeah, thank you, man, for letting me know. I don't even know how that happened. So, all right. So, I just was talking about, hopefully you didn't miss anything if I cut out a little bit there. I was just saying we're here for the Conservation Innovation Grant, and that Alberto is your contact from grants and agreements. So you'll notice in an NOFO, when you go through that they will point you towards Alberto to answer, questions about applying and stuff through grants.gov and all that. That's really where he comes in.
Evan, you're muted again.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna keep an eye on that. I don't know why that's happening.
Hmm.
You think I only do 1,000 of these a week, so you think we'd have it down by now. All right. So sorry about that. So the New Jersey staff, you already heard from some of these. You heard from me and Gail and Uzi. We're on the call. Lauren Finnegan's our public affairs specialist. She typically would be on this call too. She sent out the invite, but unfortunately, Lauren's catching a flight to Colorado today, so she had to leave a little bit early. But Lauren's our public affairs specialist, does a great job for us. Okay. Every time I go to advance the slide, for some reason, it's muting. I don't know why. Okay. Let's try this. Okay, there we go. All right, so what is CIG? So as you guys probably know, it's a competitive program, and like I was saying before, I'm not going to read line by line here on the screen, but this is more of a grant program for us. All our other big players are, our EQIP, our CSP, and AMA, and our easement programs are all kind of cost share programs, and they're all kind of competitive that way. CIG is a bit different. It is more of a true grant program. RCPP being another big one that's more grant for us. So that's definitely a difference, and it is competitive, and we'll get into the money available and stuff like that here in a minute. But it's really directed around towards kind of development of new tools and approaches, kind of innovative conservation techniques and technologies that can help us, help us all, not just NRCS, but all of us do some better things on private land, adopt more innovative techniques and stuff for our conservation on private lands, which obviously is a huge focus for NRCS. In addition to that, you guys are CIG partners, and really all our partners, right? We're all kind of working to address these, basic resource concerns that we see on our landscape. We care about our water, the air, the soil, those kind of things, and that's kind of what CIG is targeted after here. And there is a couple of versions of CIG. So there's a national program and a state program. Today, we're here really talking about the state program. But just let you know, there's kind of a national CIG classic, and then this kind of state is kind of what we call like a classic CIG. And just so you know a little bit, one of the big differences tends to be more money available on the national CIG, but what you're putting in for on a national level really needs to be innovative to the whole country. Where in New Jersey, you can apply for things that maybe are being done in other parts of the country, but are innovative to New Jersey. So that's a big difference. And makes it a little easier to apply for some things. And I kind of like that fact that, we can adopt some things other states are doing or other regions of the country. The other thing is Nationals has another CIG, or they kind of have two parts. They have their classic and then have their on-farm trials. And so that's really where you're working directly with private landowners to do stuff on their farm. So a little different there with the Nationals. But again, we're here today mostly to focus on the state CIG. We have the option to offer these grants every year. We did offer it last year in 22, and we'll talk about. I have a couple examples of what got funded last year. to help you guys out when you're thinking about your stuff. But we are, we can offer these every year. Originally, we are going to do it every 2 years. We weren't going to do it this year, but with all the different monies available and out there, we decided we would go ahead and offer it this year. The funding really comes from our EQIP program that, our big honking conservation program. And for those of you who may not be as familiar about EQIP in New Jersey, I mean, just to give you an idea, I think this year when you add in the IRA funds, we were close to 9.5 million in New Jersey. So we're talking pretty substantial amount of money that comes in for EQIP, and we have the ability to kind of shave off 5% of that to up to 5% to kind of have this CIG program in New Jersey. So I say this because if you guys are working in other states, it depends. Some states may be offering it this year, some states may not be. So just a little backstory on why, it's totally up to each state if they want to offer it or not. You probably already know this or you wouldn't be here, but there is this, it did get, this we call NOFO has been posted to the grants.gov website, and I'll show you a little snippet of that in a minute. And that's where it's posted. That's your go-to for getting to this grant and getting and figuring out your application, all that kind of stuff. And you can see there's a notice number there that you can look up in grants.gov. All right. So in New Jersey this year, we're going to offer up to we have the ability to offer up to $380,000 for this grant program. That's actually up from last year. We were at $275 last year, but because we've gotten some more EQIP money, we were able to offer a little bit more of a total this year for that. And you can see the maximum award is $380,000. So theoretically, we could fund one award at $380,000. On the flip side, there is a funding floor of $75,000. So the reason we do that is this is a fair amount of work on your end and our end to kind of administer these grants and go through it. And so we kind of feel like $75,000 is a good funding floor, to have a pretty robust project that makes it worth everybody's time to go through this. And there is a requirement that at least that you match 50% of the project cost, at least 50%. This can be in kind, it can be actual money you have on hand. It's different ways you can do it, but you are supposed to kind of come to the table with at least half of your ask. So when I talk about the maximum award being 380, or I talk about the funding floor being 75, that really is our federal fund. So if you look at it that way, your funding floor is really a project that should be in the ballpark of 150 if you're applying for that. So just be clear on that. And again, you can double that 380 to see kind of what kind of scale that maximum award is. To be honest with you, I think it would be a pretty rare instance where someone just applies for the whole amount. It's generally what I see with CIGs is it's more, it would be less than that. So anyway, like for instance, last year we funded 3 with the 275. So just to give you guys a little bit of an idea. And then project duration can be 1 to 3 years. So it's very rare. I don't know. Since I've been doing this, we've never had a 1-year project. Most people want to go for the full 3 years so they have time to kind of get things set up and rolling. And we'll talk a little bit more timing and what that'll look like from the time you put your application until you actually have an agreement. So I'll be touching on that a little bit, which will help you with the time frame. We do have 10% of those total funds kind of set aside for proposals that address our historically underserved producers. So that could be, beginning farmers or, veteran farmers and, social disadvantaged farmers. There's a bunch of different categories there. If you work with us, you're probably familiar with that. You can look it up and see what that means. I kind of cited the policy there below. It could be, community-based organizations that are serving historically underserved. So we see this a lot, obviously, in like more of the urban settings. We get some of these community-based organizations that help folks like that. So there is a push for us to, like I said, at least have 10% of those funds kind of go towards HU. So if you're putting an application for this program, definitely touch on that if you're having a benefit to some of these groups. You can see here who's eligible. It's a pretty robust list. This is, normally on our regular Farm Bill programs, we're pretty targeted on private landowners. But you can see here, this is totally different. We can do for-profit, we can do county governments, universities. Rutgers has gone, had several grants with us. So pretty wide open who can apply and who is eligible for these for the CIG grants, which is pretty nice. Kind of touching a little bit on what's funded. Again, this is big on leading to transfer of, you can see here, conservation technologies or management systems, different innovative approaches. That's really what we're looking for, is new technology, kind of try it out through pilots or, different projects or field demos, or sometimes they're even electronic tools. It could be whatever, but it's really supposed to be something that is innovative and that can really help the conservation community as a whole, particularly with conservation on private land. And obviously these projects would have to comply with all the applicable laws. And you can kind of see some of the stuff that we're looking for when we're looking at this. So you really we do want to see that the technology or the approach that you're using has significantly been studied to show that it's going to have a high probability for success. It's not a total shot in the dark here. There's some reasonable technology information out there that shows that what you're putting in for would actually be a good fit for this project and have a pretty good probability of success. We want you to really show the effectiveness, utility, affordability, and usability of what you're proposing, right? Might be the best idea ever, but if no one's really going to use it or would adopt it, right, then that kind of factors in how we're looking at it. And again, yeah, and I'm kind of touched on there with encouraging adoption. How can we encourage, how does this improve performance or encourage adoption by, conservationists, private landowners out on the landscape? Or are you introducing a conservation technology or approach not currently in use? So you definitely want to make sure you touch on these kind of aspects of things when you're putting together your application. So now I'm going to touch on, you guys have looked at the NOFO, you'll notice that we do have some priorities laid out in here. Now, I want to be very clear. These are just priorities or ideas that are out there that myself and some of the other technical staff and program staff kind of called out as some interesting ideas that we're interested in. This list, though, is definitely not, it's not this or nothing. These are just kind of ideas we came up with, we're interested in. I purposely want this to be open. There could be good stuff you guys are working on out there that we don't know about, and that could be a really good idea on private land. So if you don't see the idea, whatever you're thinking about on this list that I go through here, please don't be discouraged, because if it's a good idea, it's definitely going to get considered. Again, these are just kind of some topics or some teasers for stuff that we're kind of looking at or have a little bit of an interest in. So again, the urban ag front's really kind of heated up. I know New Jersey's been a player in it for many years at various different levels, but in the last couple of years, this has really heated up for us with NRCS. And again, I'm just kind of glaze over these, not going to read it word for word, but we have a lot of interest in looking at what's going on, how we can work in urban areas while contending with some of the contaminated soils. Just so you know, NRCS is, we're not in the business of trucking off contaminated soils or anything like that. We do have some things in place with barriers and some basic testing through our soil science division, how we can look at some of these contaminated sites. But, this is something we're concerned about, uptake in plants and stuff like that. So definitely calling it out here. My background is actually in wildlife. I was a wildlife biologist before I was SRC, so I have a lot of interest. I know we have a lot of interest in how can we nexus our urban areas for wildlife, and even forestry when it comes to urban settings. So, we know, particularly say take like a city in Newark that's near the water, smack in the Atlantic Flyway, that there is definitely T&E species and other wildlife that are using our urban environments, and we definitely want to learn more about how we can better benefit them. The third bullet here, we kind of have already, and I'll touch on this about matching livestock to farms with manure, or farms that generate manure, matching those up with producers who can utilize it. And I'll touch on this in a little bit. Department of Ag did this last year, which is we're really excited about. And there's still a little bit of room though in these urban settings, so we still kind of kept it in here, but that is something Department of Ag's working on. So that's important to know if you're thinking about that. You'd want to know. We can Department of Ag can share some information about that. Okay, and then lastly, we touched this a little bit already. Forest practices that produce heat island effect in urban areas is really important. A lot of our urban areas are really pretty devoid of trees. Climate smart ag is kind of bullet number 2 here. Another big topic NRCS is really involved in. In fact, all this Inflation Reduction Act funding we're getting is targeted around climate smart ag. So it's got a lot of attention on it. You can see some things here, soil carbon storage benefits from different conservation practices. Saltwater intrusion is something that I know we're really worried about. Our plant material center is looking at that, so kind of looking at how we're going to deal with that. Another thing we're kind of worried about, there's a lot of irrigation, particularly in the southern part of the state. What's that doing for our groundwater recharge and stream recharge? I think that's something that a lot of us have some concern about and are interested in. Let's see here. Yeah, the other thing that a lot of us are struggling with too is erosion control on intensive agriculture operations. So these are a lot of times are the plastic culture. We're seeing a lot of erosion runoff on that. It's not easy to do a lot of our traditional conservation practices on those. So that's something that, we're interested in trying to see if there's some good approaches we can do there. Obviously extreme weather events, something we're dealing with, going to continue to deal with. So is there anyone out there working on some innovative approaches for how to mitigate this in, an ag setting? Um, Again, kind of just general conservation practices and their effect on climate, is something, we're always interested in. Biochar is something that's been around for a long time. We have a standard on it, but there are some innovative techniques with biochar that we still don't know a lot about. There's some definite water quality purposes that you could look at using biochar. And also as odor control and dairy manure, which isn't something really being done here in New Jersey. We don't have a ton of dairy farms, but we do have some, so that's interesting to us. And I know something my engineers are really interested in. We have this, I don't even know if I'm going to say it right, anionic polyacrylamide. I think I did all right with that. PAM. That's a standard we have not much we've done with in New Jersey yet. It's kind of like almost like a soil glue, as I understand it, or a soil binder that we could look at for potential erosion control. We just don't know much about it or have not used it much in New Jersey. So that was put in there at a request from our engineers on that one. And then last, kind of third bullet, forestry and wildlife. So we're always looking for innovation, innovative conservation approaches, technologies with forestry and wildlife. The other thing we all know, there's been a big loss of ash species, and this is particularly worrisome because it's in a lot of our riparian areas. Is there anyone working on any kind of cool or innovative stuff with that? High marsh habitat with sea over eyes, obviously that's a concern. So something that I know a lot of folks have interest in. So kind of calling that out there. Tidelands ownership. So this, as I understand it, I'm more of a North Jersey guy, but as I understand it, where tidelands comes into play and state jurisdiction, and it becomes a problem with us being able to implement our farm bill programs on that. So is there some innovative strategies where maybe someone can step up and hold some contracts in these kind of areas that's like a nonprofit or something, we can work through them, and it's kind of what we're getting at there. And then, last but not least here, forest stand composition and look in forestry and looking at the carbon sequestration, carbon storage potential. Some of this has been going on throughout the country, but it's something that we feel could be a need here for New Jersey to look at a little bit closer. So that's kind of it again, and just make sure I'm clear. Don't feel bad if your project's not listed here if you got a good idea. It's just these were some of the things that we were kind of looking at. But I did want to call out too that for the New Jersey State CIG, all these projects really have to be performed in New Jersey. So again, nationally it could be more broad, but for New Jersey CIG, we're really looking at things that are being performed in New Jersey. So just want to point that out. I know we got some overlap with Pennsylvania or Delaware or up in New York or whatever, but for this CIG, it's really got to be focused on New Jersey. Okay, and so just to give you guys a little bit of an example, a little more flavor on kind of what got funded last year, and a little flavor of the types of projects. So New Jersey Department of Ag, I already touched on this a little bit. They did go in, they're working on a tool, kind of like their land link. If you guys are familiar with that, that links up farmers with land. They're working on a New Jersey manure link over the next couple of years, which would be cool, which will kind of get at hooking up those manure producers with those land users that could utilize the nutrients in that manure. So kind of cool there. Rutgers had a neat one last year. This is Dr. Maslow out of Rutgers. If any of you know her, she's looking at, she's been doing some interesting studies over the years on our native wildlife and their ability to predate on insects that cause like insect pests for crops, essentially. So the one she put in last year, she'd been doing some stuff on bats, and then this one from last year is actually looking at bats and barn swallows and the differences in their predation techniques. Obviously bats are at night, barn swallows during the day. Barn swallows are also declining. They're not T&E or anything, but their population is going down. So you can see a tie there. If these two wildlife species actually do a good job of controlling pests on cropland, this might be something we want to promote, put up barn swallow houses or bat boxes, whatever, on farmland. So that's kind of the tie there. So that was kind of interesting project. And then New Jersey Audubon last year was selected. They have a cool project where, this is more looking at woodlands, but when you put up deer fence in the woods, there's a lot of problems with that. It's a barrier to wildlife. Branches can fall on it. It's a real maintenance headache sometimes with this fence in the woods. So they're trying out something that we saw a little bit on some cropland, which is these kind of tapes. It looks like step-in electric tape, and they treat it with this kind of a chemical deterrent, and they've actually it seems to be effective in ag land, and we're looking to see if this is something that could be effective in our forest land as a much least cost alternative to deer fence, traditional deer fence, 8-foot deer fence, as a way to maybe allow the forest to regenerate and keep deer out of certain areas. So that was kind of cool. Obviously, the nexus to us would be if that works. This would be something we could offer through our cost share program. So, and obviously would have benefits to private land. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of, kind of some of the projects that got funded last year. So again, if you're going to apply, and you may know this already, but it's going to be, as I said before, through grants.gov. You can go in there. I just did this yesterday just to try it out, make sure everything was working good. So if you go to that search grants and you drop in that CIG NOFO number there, it'll pop right up. And the process is laid out, pretty well in the NFO, so you can kind of see how it's working, which is good. Just kind of what makes up that application. You can see you're going to have your project abstract and your narrative. You're going to have any references if they're relevant. Kind of touch on the qualifications of your team, who you're working with, if it's you or, a group of individuals. Kind of let us know about what you foresee the environmental impacts being. There's a couple forms where you got to declare if you've had a CIG before. So that might not be applicable to all, but it's applicable to some. And also if you're going to be including, outreach HU producers or if you're a HU producer yourself applying for this. I think that form gets at that. And then obviously your budget information. So that would be, there's an application, the SF 424, the 424A, which is your budget. Indirect costs, we tend to get some questions on that. But the indirect costs that you might have, the kind of overhead, benefits, stuff like that. And then I think I touched on it another slide or two here, but some entities, Rutgers comes to mind, has a pre-negotiated, actually, I'll talk about that in a second. That'll be better here I'll touch on that in a minute. And then letters of commitment, project match. If you're getting matching from other parties, you got to let us know about that so we know. Certification regarding lobbying. It's just a form about lobbying. I don't know. If my grants agreements folks could probably tell you more about why that's important, but you got to fill that out. And then, like I was just about to talk about, this negotiated indirect cost rate. So some places like Rutgers have an established federal indirect cost share rate or cost rate that they've previously negotiated with the federal government. So in that case, they have a direct indirect cost that they charge for all federal grants. For a lot of people out there, you wouldn't have that. And I think our standard indirect cost, it might be in the NFO, but I think it's 10%. If you don't have something pre-established, it's like a general 10% for indirect that gets added to that. Does that sound right, Uzi? Do you know off the top of your head? I think it's 10%, right? If they don't have one established.
Yes, 10% is the minimum.
Yeah. Okay. And then you can include some letters of support. Those are optional, but always nice to see. If you've got some people, let us know who's interested in this kind of research or project that you're doing. All right, so you work hard, you work on your application here, and then what? So the applications are due May 7th by 11:59 p.m. So I'm pretty happy we were able, I honestly would have liked to even got it out maybe a little bit sooner, but this got out, I think, at the end of February. So I feel like we were able to give you guys a good amount of time. I know sometimes these grants come out and it's pretty quick turnaround time. So I'm pretty happy we were able to work in as much time as we did to give you guys plenty of time to work on your applications. So yeah, May 7th, 2023. Now I will say this, and I ran into the situation last year. We had an applicant that kind of waited till the last minute, and there was some sort of like update or something that happened on the grants.gov site. It was like updated over the weekend or something, and he got screwed up. And then I think the due date was like Monday, and he could not get it all in by then. And I felt really bad because he put a lot of work into it. And I thought that because there were some issues with the grants agreements website that, maybe there would be some leniency in terms of letting him get in. And I found out the hard way that absolutely not. They, in an effort to be fair for all applicants who did get their stuff in on time, they would not allow that application to be submitted. So I give you those words of warning because it is completely out of my control, Gail's control. It does not matter. It's out of New Jersey control. It's all on grants and agreements. And, God forbid something happens, if you're waiting until the last minute to try to get it in, they're going to tell you sorry. So I just definitely want to make sure that's known. And I was a little surprised by that, how rigid they were, but they were. So anyway, just keep that in mind. As you're working on this, please, if don't wait till the last minute. I'd hate for you to get shut out because of something stupid like a system update or something, So anyway, just words of warning on that. Once you guys submit, grants agreements generally takes about, it seemed like last year it was like 2, maybe 3 weeks for them to kind of go through their processes, and they kind of check for completion, do all this other stuff. So it's a couple weeks at least before we get it. And so if you see here, we're going to try to rush and get these turned around as quickly as we can. So we're shooting to have selections made by June 16th. So pretty quick turnaround time from when we get it. And then once you are actually accepted, for the grant, then we would look to get those contracts signed and all implemented. As you'd imagine, there's quite a process that goes through to kind of get these things established. We would like to have all these awards executed by September 30, 2022. Now, I'll tell you something. I think that that's good, but oftentimes it ends up running over September for various reasons, whether it's on our end, your end, getting things signed, whatever. So I say this because when you're working on your application and you're planning out your timeline for like when you're going to start this project, I always tell people I would wait and don't really plan to start anything till like November of, if in this case, November of 2022. Just give yourself a little bit of buffer time because you really cannot do anything until that agreement's signed and in place. Any expenditures, anything you do before that agreement signed in place, you'll not be able to be reimbursed for. So when you're planning out your project time frame, your 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, whatever you're going to do, I would just say don't plan, as you work on it, don't plan on starting anything. Just say before November, just to be safe. You can always start earlier if you get your agreement signed earlier. But from a time frame standpoint, I would do that. And I think it does say in the NFO that you can, I think it might say something about October, but I might even buffer it to November just to be really safe. There's some new staff on grants agreements too, so I know they're working through some things. So, and they've got a lot of things they got to wrap up at the end of the year, and that sometimes is why these things get pushed a little bit. So, anyway, just being honest about that. It's something to keep in mind. Okay, so during that review, when the application comes in, grants agreements is going to screen it for completeness. So if there's stuff missing or whatever, you got to make sure it's a complete application. For sure. And they're pretty good in the past. If you reach out to them, make sure everything's in, it's always a good move. This is outside of New Jersey. We have nothing to do with this. We won't even see the agreement until they screen it, or see the application until they screen it, and it gets sent to us. And so once it gets sent to us, then I head up a panel of kind of peer review subject matter experts. So depending on what your application is for, it may call in my agronomist, it may call in our biologist or forester. Generally Gail's involved in this for programs. We might have a couple partners involved in this too that we work with to kind of help us look at these and kind of, I think I have a slide here next that kind of talks about what we're looking at when we review it, but they'll help with the review of these. And kind of score them up, and we kind of go from there. And then once basically we do that, we'll send those scores and what we think to our state conservationist. Julie Hawkins is who our state conservationist is right now. So we would make our recommendation to her, and then ultimately she makes the final decision. And generally, she's pretty much going to most times go with what we're recommending, but she does actually make the final decision on what we're funding. All right. So again, when we do this technical peer review panel, this is really what we're kind of targeting when we're reviewing them for the score. So your purpose, your approach, and your goals. How innovative it is, or innovative the approach is. Project management, that we feel comfortable you as the applicant can pull this off, or have the right partners in place to pull it off. And then what are the benefits and transferability? Like I said before, it might be the best idea in the world, but if we think it's got a low chance of ever taking off or being accepted or into the conservation community and used on private land, we're going to score projects that we know would have that benefit higher, for sure. And again, I already told you, but we're going to do selections. We hope to have selections done by June 16th. We will notify you via email. And don't worry, I know we all get a million emails these days, and you may miss that first email or whatever. We'll make sure if you get selected, I'll stay on it. You'll hear from me, and I'll make sure I get a response back from you that it's not like we'll walk away from your application if we email you once and don't hear back or something. So we'll be able to work with you there. Also, once you're selected for that agreement, NRCS here in New Jersey will have a lot more control then. We can talk more openly and freely with you about kind of what you're doing. This is where Uzi gets more involved. GAD will still be a part of it, but it's definitely kind of once you're selected, some of that firmness about being fair and not giving anyone a competitive advantage goes away because now you're selected. So now we can talk and work with you and, do a little bit more with you if questions or help fleshing something out. But yeah, so just want to talk about that. So we'll all work together to kind of get that award executed by that September 30th deadline if we can pull it off. So that's it. That's all we have for today in terms of the presentation. So I'll flip my camera back on here and open up the floor if there's any questions, or Gail, Uzi, if you think I missed anything or we're saying something or whatever we want to do.
You're unmuted.
Dana.
Hello, I have a couple questions. One,
Sure.
Typically, how many people or organizations apply for these grants?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, from year to year. Sometimes we get, several, and sometimes we just get a few, So, I could say I know of a few that are applying this year. I can say that, but yep.
Competing against 100 other.
No, you got a pretty good chance. You know what I mean? It's not like you're going to be 100. It's, I'd say anywhere from 3 to 10, something like that. I'd expect. Mm-hmm.
And then I just want to make sure my understanding is correct about the funding floor. That's $75,000 is the minimum amount you would give to one organization.
Yeah, for one CIG application, right? So we'd want you to have an ask of at least 75,000, which means $150,000 project. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one more question. Sorry.
That's okay.
I know you reserve 10% of funds for historically underserved, but that's $38,000. So how does that work?
That's why you said, yeah. So the rule says we have to hold back at least if you really read it, it says at least 10%, right? So yeah, you're absolutely right. It adds up to 38,000, but typically it will actually be closer to 75,000. I think last year said we at least had to fund one out of the applications we received that had direct ties to HU. So if we fund one that has HU, the rest don't have to address HU, but I find that most of the time there's a nexus for what's going on where we can make the case that there's an impact to HU,
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good questions. Thank you for that.
Evan, good afternoon. This is Callie. Like other people, I did not comb my hair today, so I'm going to spare everyone. But my of course, eternal support, of course, is for the urban projects. And as I'm aware, certain municipalities have their own ordinances and criterias on contaminated soils for community gardens. Does this grant process work in conjunction? Have you collected, again, just a kind, helpful, supportive question. Have you, in fact, collected the local ordinances, let's say in Jersey City, I know has an ordinance, and let's say Newark, to create, of course, and accelerate addressing those programs? Obviously, the common denominator in my question is create permanency in these community gardens, or even greater viability of enabling more community gardens on these sites. Tell me, Evan, how do we collect that information? And does the NRCS grant? There's a big question. Sorry. Does the NRCS program work in conjunction with those specific municipal ordinances for contaminated sites and community gardens? Thank you.
Yeah, no, good question, Callie. so as you guys know, right, and beyond even just urban, what do we have, like 550 municipalities or something like that in New Jersey, right? So it's very hard, to stay on top of everything, right? And obviously the urban sites could be a little tighter, and we've had some involvement on some case by case type things, when someone has applied, and we've tried to work on that. NRCS by and large has a caveat on all our programs that it is the landowner's responsibility to make sure they comply with any kind of local laws and rules, right? And then that is solely in place because of these situations where there's such variability amongst the different municipalities and all that. So I don't want to say that is like a cop out to like, oh, well, it's on you, right? Like we are very much involved, because you can say that about DEP permits, you can say about anything, right, that we do. And so we tend to be very engaged. I think that's a big issue that you're talking about, Callie. I know it's very much on Morgan Devine, our urban conservationist radar. And again, we have had some of these discussions on a case by case, site specific in said municipalities that we've worked in, but I can't say NRCS as a whole is pulling together all these kind of, rules, each municipal's rules and what the different candidates are. We do rely heavily on the applicant. In this case, it was CIG. Say you were putting a CIG in Newark for urban work on contaminated soils, we would want to see, maybe not verbatim, but see some recognition that the applicant is aware of what the rules are and working within those bounds. So I don't know. Did that kind of get it at Callie a
No,
little bit?
no, even I think, of course, you're always, positive in the sense of moving forward with this as it needs. So if I'm, again, as a case example, if I'm an organization and I find a lot in, whatever urban municipality, and in fact, of course, there is no previous community gardens, as under this application, just a second supplemental question, does the applicant for the adopt a lot now in question have to do the baseline testing, or can the testing be done under this grant?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Just think about that, Evan. I don't mean
Yeah,
that.
it would probably depend on the situation. I know what you mean. That could be a big expense. I mean, I think it would be helpful to see something, right? That's been thought about, or that maybe there is some baseline there. But yeah, it's kind of because here's the other thing with these grants too that's important, and especially for someone like you, Callie, who's used to working with us on our programs. Like typically,
Yes.
if this is ECOP, we'd say, oh, Edwin will come out and do a PXRF for you and help you out with this, and all that. Where the CIG, it's not that we can't be involved, because we are, but it's not the same level of involvement, as it might be, say, under EQIP, right? Like this is a little more on you, as the applicant. And it's more like we're awarding it based on the agreement. So yeah, so again, I it's hard for me to it could get into the specifics, but in general, I will say that this is a little more hands off of a program compared to some of our others, if that makes sense. And I don't know, Gail or Uzi, I don't know if you've got any other thoughts, or if you think I'm saying something wrong or missed something, but not to put you guys on the spot. But
No, I think what you said makes sense.
Mhm.
It's more of a sharing with the partner though than
Mhm.
normal, which is what you just said.
Mhm.
It'd be
Yeah.
great to, Evan, I encourage you just to try and do a collective maybe on these municipal ordinances and see how in the future or the medium term, not, not in this cycle, but,
Mhm.
to ease the cost of phase one testing on adopt-a-lots, it can be quite extravagant to try and substantiate previous historical uses of these lots. And of course, to create greater accessibility to this wonderful program. So I just encourage you, as always. Thank you, Evan.
Oh
for
yeah,
having
no,
me.
Callie. As always, you always have some good suggestions and feedback, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Shaki, you got your hand up.
Hi, Evan. Thank you. Thanks for the great overview of the program. This was really helpful. I just have I have two questions, but first of all, just to clarify the funding. So I understand the floor, but the maximum per CIG, is that 380, or is 380 the entire amount that's available to the program? And if you fund 3 CIGs, then the maximum for each would be like 125 or something. Is that correct? Is that how I'm
Yeah,
understanding
it
this?
is. that is the total is 380. That's correct. Yep. And then just in case, because I know some people jumped on, I think after I was covering that one slide too. So I can reiterate for some of those folks too. So yeah, so we're allowed to put 5% of our equip budget into this program. So in this case, this year it was 380,000. So that's our total amount available. And again, that's looking at it as that's your federal ask for this program, right? So then if you're going to ask for 380, let's see if I can do the math real quick. It's what's that, 760? Did I do it right? So I think you'd have a project that's worth, whatever, double that. So it'd be 760 or whatever. So you'd have to come to the table with at least a 50% match to that. Yep. So in general, our projects probably are more around the 100-ish, thousand again. And, I don't know. That's just where it is. But that doesn't mean if you have a really good idea and you want to come and ask for that full 380, you could do that. I will say this, that I do have some flexibility which may give you guys some relief too, that, if we had 3 projects, right, and they were all 200, let's just say, and I couldn't fund them all or whatever, we could come back and say, man, we really like your 3 ideas. Can we kind of rescope these a little bit, or maybe bite off a little smaller bite? There is some flexibility there, to have that kind of conversation. So.
Okay, so if somebody comes asking for 380 and they get funded, that's the only CIG that gets funded. Okay, just
that could
okay.
be. That could
Okay.
be.
Okay.
Yep.
So, okay,
I
so
think
that's
380 is a pretty big ask from what I've seen. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, theoretically that could happen.
Okay, great. And to clarify, for like historically underserved institutions like HSIs, MSIs, and so on, the cost share is 50% of whatever you're coming to the table asking for the federal funds. Is that?
Yeah,
also?
good question. So
Okay.
typically in our standard farm bill programs, there's a little bit of a higher cost share rate for historically underserved producers. But in this particular case, I believe it still is 50%. I would double check that in the NFL, but I'm
So,
pretty confident about that it's still that 50% match.
oh, okay, great. And then just one last question. So involving students at Rutgers, that is allowable, right? In terms
Sure.
of having them participate in the project. Okay, great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, and it's spelled out in that NFO, but the in-kind is totally fine, so that 50%, so you could, assign some value to that in-kind service as part of that 50% match.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. No, good questions. I appreciate it. For sure. Give it another minute. Let me check the chat. I wasn't really paying attention to that. Let's see if I found online. Okay, something about okay, thank you, Uzi. Appreciate you getting a question about the 424 there.
Yeah, one of the documents. I just want to say something else, because I work with all the documentation, right? And that if you guys are going to apply for CIG grants, also you have to have your SAMS registration number updated every year, because that's important when we're going to fill up all the information and execute the grant.
Yeah, good point, Uzi. Yeah, that's a little bit of a pain in the neck if you're an organization. That SAMS number I know gives people some agita, so I would definitely get on that sooner than later. What defines? This would be a good question, Gail or Uzi. What defines when they need a SAMS number? It's when it's like an LLC or something, right? It's not like an individual, right? But
Yeah, it's like a group, like an LLC,
Like an entity.
yeah, an
Are
entity,
doing some
not
work,
an
some
individual.
yeah.
Right. Mhm.
yeah, so if you're an entity, you definitely want to check out that SAMS thing.
So basically, it's somebody with like an EIN number as opposed to a social security number.
Good. Yeah, good call, Gail. Yep. So definitely pay attention to SAMS if that's something for sure. Yeah, and then I guess I could just add too, because I didn't really talk about it when it comes to the reimbursement for the CAG. there's a lot of flexibility there. So when you get into your agreement, your application, you can kind of request federal money at any time during that process. So for instance, let's just say it's a standard, say you do $150,000 application, of which you're asking 75, the minimum from us. You could, as you go through year 1 and year 2, year 3, you put in reports, financial reports and progress reports, and you could ask for our 75,000 all in the first year if you wanted to, right? And then charge yourself in the later parts, or you can wait and not ask for our money till the end, or you could ask kind of sprinkled in throughout. So there's some nice flexibility there with how the money can be distributed throughout the course of the agreement. And then at the end, and again, this is in the NFL, but in the end, we will be looking for a final report, obviously, of how your project went. And then I think it's in there too, that we typically like to see, a presentation to either our staff or, maybe at a state technical committee meeting or something like that. And if you guys have been on some of our state technical committees, you'll see where I've had some people come on and talk about their CIGs, whether they're in progress or when they got done or whatever. So, yeah, parts in it too, because we, obviously we don't want this work occurring in a vacuum where it's only you guys and us that know it's happening, right? It's good to get that word out and let people know this stuff's going on. So.
Hi, Evan. I posted something in the chat. So in the NFO, there is a link that's supposed to take you to an example of a project description. And I can't find that. Is that something that's available, that a sample project description for somebody like me who's never done this before to look at potentially?
Yeah, there is. And you know what? The NRCS did all this reworking of our websites, and it was kind of funny actually, because I totally forgot about that. We had that same problem last year where the link didn't exactly take you to the sample project. Let me just see. I'm looking real quick. If I can't find it here in a second, I believe I can paste it back into this chat and get that out, and I can have Lauren send it out. Let's see, fact sheet, congressional. Okay, I'm just looking real quick. Sorry about this. Okay, okay, let me try to do this. So this would also be of interest to you. So I'm going to share one more time here real quick. I know we're only got 5 minutes left, and I lied to you guys, said it was going to be a half hour and we're already over, or not over, but took longer than I thought. So here's the CIG website. So this would be good for you guys to see. There are all these searches and stuff here where you can look at the different projects. So this might get some of it. Give you an idea kind of what's going on out there. And there's all these search things here. So I don't know if that's our place. So this is just, if you go to the National Resources Conservation Service CIG, instead of home, it takes you to this. That's the link I just clicked on that you had put in there. If you go over here to projects, and this is where you can search for all different projects and see kind of information. Let's see if there's applicants. Let's see. This is how to apply, start competition, more information. Okay, here we go. Sample grant application documents. There's this here though. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like there's some good stuff in here, but I'm not seeing it. You would think it would be right here. There'd be a full sample grant where this is more commitment letters. Huh. I'll follow up with CIG on that and see if there's more of an example application than that. We just see if there's anything. This is grantees. Let's just see. Oh, okay. Here you go. So here's some more information here under the grantee templates and forms. New grantee orientation. So this would be more like once you get accepted, but it looks like there is some information in here too. So I'll dig around with this a little bit more. If I see, if I find anything more, I'll make sure I get that back out in the chat, and we'll get Lauren to send it out to everybody too. or kind of send it out broadly like we did on some of the other announcements. We'll get it up on our website and stuff too. So, okay. Yeah, thanks for going through. Good. All right. So we're winding down here. Is there any other last questions or anything? Let's see the chat going here. Let's just see what this says. Oh, no problem, Christine. Thank you. Yeah. Good. Well, hopefully that was helpful. I already know about, a couple, like I said, I've heard some people thinking about applying, and that's pretty cool. I think we have some good ones, but yeah, I definitely encourage you to apply. Like I said, we don't tend to get, that many. I think it'll be it's definitely worth your time. I would say too that if we get a real good showing this year with more CIG, it would entice us again to look at doing this again next year. So even if you don't get it this year, we could look at it. If I got some good applications I know are around, and we can look at doing this again next year, and we'll just keep at it. But yeah, with that, I definitely appreciate everybody's time today, and thanks for your interest in applying for the program.